I don't want to do the same things anymore. I don't want to keep myself in regulation and routine. I don't necessarily feel that it's natural to be consistent. I don't necessarily want to do the things that I've always done. But the challenge with that is, but I also don't really know what I do want. And that's one of the big things about this shift is moving out of the known and that which we seek to repeat to perfect and moving into the unknown where we're having to rely on an inner compass rather than external signposts about which way to go.
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur podcast. Today, we've got an amazing guest. She's been a channeler for more than 25 years, and she's been helping like hundreds of thousands of people, like guiding people through their awakening. And more importantly, I really want to deep dive on talking about from 3D to 5D. And we were just talking off air just then, like she started talking about like what is 5D like back in like 20 years ago, where nobody was really talking about this topic. Now it's become a lot more common. So welcome, Rebecca Dawson.
Thanks, Gary. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah. So part of the show it's all about bringing awareness to raising consciousness, and I know that like for a big bulk of your work you've been transmitting the wisdom from the master, which is a unified collective consciousness, and you've shared a lot of amazing content on your YouTube channels, on your websites. And one of the things I was fascinated by, you talked about the system reset that humanity is undergoing. Can you talk more about what is happening to the world right now?
Well, right now, what's happening, we could look at this a couple of different ways. We could say, well, what's happening collectively is that people are awakening to a true sense of what they are and what their capacity is. And that's a step or a leap in evolution, really, because humanity is beginning to evolve beyond the containment of what they think they're allowed to do and relaxing more into what we really deeply, from an innate place of consciousness, desire to do and desire to create. So collectively, we're evolving beyond what we would call a circular repetitive loop of learning, where we learn something and we come back around and we do it again and in a different way or a slightly better way. And our third force density had a lot to do with that, of course, but we'll probably get into that later. And we're evolving now beyond that containment. So we're now on a personal level, really awakening to, I don't want to do the same things anymore. I don't want to keep myself in regulation and routine. I don't necessarily feel that it's natural to be consistent. I don't necessarily want to do the things that I've always done. But the challenge with that is, but I also don't really know what I do want. And that's one of the big things about this shift is moving out of the known and that which we seek to repeat to perfect and moving into the unknown where we're having to rely on an inner compass rather than external signposts about which way to go.
Wow, that's interesting because I was just having a normal, very like 3D conversation about someone's work yesterday. Actually, even with my kids, we were talking about like the need for the kids to do well in school, especially like Asian family, like academically, it's really important. And for us, it's not so much academically, but like if you get certain grades and get a degree at university, like as an accountant or as a dentist or whatever, your path is more certain versus like
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur or someone that's not going through the traditional path, like how are they going to turn out? And that path is unknown and is scary, but yet it potentially it can live a life of more to your passion.
Right. And when we engage with systems or pathways or roles or identities that are already kind of created, there's a lot of structure around them. So we're actually now adhering to a structure rather than living from our consciousness and our inner genius that can then go and create new structures and systems. And we're certainly in a shift in how we want to navigate in this world, but we're also seeing more obviously that the current set of availabilities for human experience are not necessarily enough
Yeah.
for an awakening consciousness.
Yeah. And it sounds like there's also a shift from the very structure of like the patriarchy, the masculine, to the feminine, the flow.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, there's all sorts of structures and systems that are being challenged at this time, and some of them are very obvious. You know, we look at like the economic and the political structures and the education structures, and some of them are not so obvious. And
Right.
some, you know, some of the most powerful systems we're not even really aware of.
Mm,
You know, such as, you know, I can have permission to feel something that I want to feel if my external reality gives me evidence to be able to do that. So that's a very, very powerful structure of belief that we have.
what do you think is happening, or what's your view of what's happening around the wars, like with Iran and Israel, and then you got India and Pakistan? It seems like wars are sprouting up, but I guess it's nothing new. Like it's yeah, there's war going on for a long time, but within my peripheral, it just seems like that more and more war starting up of the last month.
As consciousness awakens within us as humans and as a collective humanity, that's like looking through a camera and having the aperture widen. We can now see more. And as we start to see more, we start to see more of what's on the table for human experience. In other words, we get to see more of what's available for humanity to experience. And that's instead of just being on a particular journey where there's a particular set of things that you want to learn or need to learn in many perspectives, it now widens and now so much more experience is available. Now, there's a couple of different advantages to that. And one of them is, well, now we can actually see all of the experiences that humanity has. And we can really now begin to experience more within one lifetime than we could before because there's a certain degree of exposure to things now, particularly because of media and communications and so on, that we weren't exposed to before. So we're exposed to a myriad of things in a very short period of time. So that's indicative of evolution. But the second important thing about this is that we can now start to see, well, this is what's been on offer for human experience. And what you start to realize is that it's the same themes, it's the same experiences, it's the same traumas, it's the same goals, it's the same desires that humanity's had for hundreds of thousands of years. It hasn't changed.
Mm,
And so once you start to see everything that's on offer, that's when the consciousness within begins to ignite and say, well, what else? Because I'm aware of all of this. I've probably done it thousands of times. Humanity knows this stuff. Here we go again. What else is possible? So that's where we are now when we talk about conflict and a war. That's one of the reasons we're seeing so much of it right now, because it's part of that evolutionary shift into seeing the totality of what's available in this planetary experience. The second thing is that humans, and actually the Earth reality itself, as we know, is designed for duality. And that can seem like it's a bit of a chore, and perhaps we don't really like duality so much, but with every dimensional reality, if you always ask the question, what's the function of this? It can really be helpful in understanding how it's a mechanism for evolution. So, in a dualistic reality, such as the Earth reality, the function of duality is for reunion into unity again. And it's there's very few places in the galactic universe that the Earth experience is a part of that has this mechanism of duality bringing back reunion. And so there are many beings that incarnate into the Earth experience just to experience that contrast between the separation and then coming back into the union state. And that happens within the human itself. So we could say we can unite between each other, but it's actually our ability to be able to experience pain and trauma and all the things that happen as a human and to actually coexist with the love state and optimism and expansion and compassion, bringing them together into one place. And that's the mastery of being a human, being able to do both of those things in the one place.
I was going to ask you, what would you recommend on how to approach what is going on with these wars? Should we like not look at the news, almost like put our heads under the blankets, or should we look at it and look and maybe there's a recommended way on how to transcend these feelings of like this shouldn't have happened, or oh my God, the pain, the suffering, and the deaths and all that.
Well, it's tricky when it comes to things like war because there's such a natural instinct that drives many of us to turn away or to look away or it shouldn't be here. But because we've prefaced this part of the conversation with this idea that the whole point is to bring duality into unity in this earth reality, we can't really reject anything to be able to do that. We've got to be able to hold the compassion, acknowledge the pain, acknowledge that these things exist, not reject it or ignore it, but to be aware of it, in many cases, to feel it, but also have that sit alongside the compassion and the love and the peace. And that's the alchemy that brings us back into unity consciousness. That's the evolution of the planet at this time. So the exposure of all these things is if we think about it, it's a very important part of that reunion because if we didn't have exposure to it, for many people that's happening front and center. They're on the front line of that conflict. For other people, it's family and friends that they know in those places. For others, we see it in the media. And it's the ability to hold the duality of how we feel about it together that will ultimately transform the consciousness of humanity so we start to experience different themes.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rebecca. That's very well said. It reminds me of one of like Byron Katie's teaching, and I remember like navigating through. Back then, there was a lot of external conflicts, like war and protests, and there's two things. Number one, it says that if you are in conflict internally, then that projects that energy out. So you're not helping anyone when you are in conflict.
Right.
And secondly, the age old saying that she keeps reminding us is that who are we to say that that shouldn't have happened? Like in our human egoic eyes, is that that shouldn't have happened. We should just be peaceful and no war. But maybe that and people shouldn't be dying, shouldn't be suffering, but maybe that's part of what some of us signed up for, to experience that in the front line,
Yes.
and some of us sign up to experience it in from more of a distance. Yeah, so who's to say that's not supposed to happen?
And everything in this earth reality for humans' evolution is a provocation for unity. Now,
Yeah,
we can often think that conflict is a provocation for separation, but it's actually an experience of separation to provoke us into unity. So, if we start to look at everything that we want to reject or get rid of as an opportunity to ignite us back into unification, you begin to see the world very differently. Because, yes, there's still pain. Yes, there's still trauma. Yes, there's still upset. We're meant to experience those things and to feel them because it's part of the flavor of what's possible within this reality. But the suffering comes when we try to reject it or say that it shouldn't be there. It's
yeah,
the resistance to the pain and the trauma and the discomfort that creates our sense of suffering.
yeah. Um, Another clip you just reminded me about is I saw this Iranian comedian talk about, hey, like I'm Iranian, I'm also American as well, like I'm from two race. Um, and now that they're going to war, and the answer ultimately is love, and um, we are one race, the human race. And again, watching that was beautiful on how that was encapsulated to bring it back to unity.
Yeah.
Um, and if there wasn't separation, and it's so easy to say like he's wrong or they are wrong, and that's why it started, and they shouldn't attack, but to 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 transcend above all that and to bring it back home with love. Ultimately, this is what we hear about. It's almost like it's another level of understanding what love is.
Yes. And sometimes I like to see what happens in the world. The masters show me this image quite often, as we know, when there is conflict or the dark and the light, as some people like to say. It's a game of chess. And so you can be very involved in the strategy of the chess and trying to beat the other side and who should win and who's right and
Yeah,
the black and the white pieces on the board. But if you step back and you're just watching the game, you realize you develop a new appreciation for what's happening in the earth reality, because you realize it's all quite genius,
yeah,
because both players are of source consciousness,
yeah,
and there's something playing itself out.
yeah,
And there's all these beings that have gathered to watch it, wondering what's going to happen next.
yeah. Wow, that's beautifully said. So let's switch turns a little bit. I want to ask you, how do you define like what the new Earth? Is it a place? Is it a frequency? Is it a timeline? There's a lot of talk about we're shifting
Mhm.
to 5D, and then like the people that doesn't graduate equivalent, they stay on the old Earth, and yeah. So anyway, like what's your understanding, or how do you explain what the new Earth is?
Thanks for asking the question. It's a great question. What we would like to say is it's not about graduating, and it's not a question of some people staying behind and some people moving into a new earth. That's a huge simplification. And what was one of the first ways that humanity was introduced to this idea of the new earth. So, because that's where consciousness was at that time, I think that was in the 90s probably, that concept was introduced. It was introduced in a shift between the old and into the new. But now we're much more savvy around multidimensionality. People are getting a lot more comfortable with this, that multiple things exist simultaneously, and that in every moment there's multiple versions of you in different timelines and different dimensional realities. So dimension, every different dimension is a slightly different vibration, and therefore a different, what we call timeline. So it's not a question now of whether some are staying behind or some are moving on. It's a question of, are we locked into a timeline that's based on particular themes that we've been repeating for hundreds and thousands of years? Or have we now expanded our consciousness enough through our willingness to unify light and dark within and be quite present and more neutral, that we now transcend that, what we would call time lock of third, fourth density. And now we can freely move into different timelines and different versions of life. And that's so exciting, because it means that you don't just move from one earth to another earth. You actually move from a fixed blueprint of possibilities for what can happen in your life to now you have infinite number of possibilities that can happen, and you can move from this version to this version to this version to this version as often as you wish. So this is actually what freedom and sovereignty is that you're no longer having to play out certain stories and themes that don't really belong to you, and that you have no way of consciously creating new ones or evolving beyond them. And that's what a lot of people have been talking about with, the old earth, the structures and the beliefs and the systems that keeps us doing the same stuff, life after life after life after life after life.
Yeah.
So
So
that's how we describe it.
so it goes along with your earlier points about that rather than having a very set path of predictable, like the reset is giving people a lot more unknown and free choice on where to go. And so it's more like tapping into the quantum world of infinite possibility that you can
Exactly.
experience what you want to experience. Then
Exactly.
can you talk us through what is the difference between like 3D, 4D, and 5D? Like it is definitely not one of the concepts that we learn in school that, um, but yet like now that we're into it, more and more people constantly talk about it. Like what's the different Ds about?
So it's pretty simple, really, because third dimensional reality is basically a reality experience where we have the core fundamental of this is we have Maya, we have a separation, we have a point of distance between A and B. And because we have that measurability, that gives us an experience of time, it gives an experience of distance, but it's a very contained reality. It's actually, we would say it's circular. So it appears to be linear, but it's actually circular. And so it's circular because in linearity, everything that's already happened determines what we think can happen. And we make choices based upon our history. Even if it's not conscious, people will say, well, I made this choice in my life because in my past life this happened, or because, it was a part of my soul contract, or there's a whole bunch of different ways that people describe the past determining what their journey will be. And that's third dimensionality. So things are fixed. The other thing that's really inherent in third dimensionality is everything is sequential. So you can't just go from A to Z, you have to go through certain steps to get to Z. So everything happens slowly. We experience life, the masters say we experience life as a slow motion replay in 3D. And they describe it like walking through an art gallery, and all of the pictures on the wall, we're just moving through them. And they're just moments in time. But because we walk in a certain sequence, it appears that there is progress that's being made. So they like to talk about 3D being a slow motion replay reality where something can happen instantly, but the Earth reality as we've known it is like watching the slow motion replay to figure out how something happened. So, like if you're watching a sports match and a goal gets scored really quickly, that's like instant manifestation. It happens so fast in front of your eyes. But then we've got to go back and we've got to actually look at how that player did it and where were they positioned and how did they move their leg and how many years did they train and how did they line it all up and set it up so that it happened. So they talk about 3D reality as we've known it as the slow motion replay of humans figuring out how stuff actually happens. And so, because of that, everything's process driven. And so, as we're becoming more conscious, people are speeding up. You get a lot of people whose minds work really quickly, ADHD and all of these kids that come through, and they don't want to do things in sequence. They want to get from A to Z and they don't want to wait. And they want things now, and they don't want things to move slowly because their consciousness is already wired for 5D. So we're going to get to that. So 3D is basically separation, distance, process, time sequence, past determining the future. Very difficult to do anything different, actually. So fourth dimension is what we would call like the membrane or the ceiling on the third dimensional cyclical loop that Earth reality's been in. And 4D is almost like the ceiling that kind of recycles your energy back into it. So many people talk about when they pass away that they go out of their body and they meet relatives and guides that they've known, and they realize they still have things to do, and so they come back, and this is really that fourth dimensional membrane is what we call the experience that keeps us in contract and keeps us in reincarnation with the same themes over and over and over again in this third dimensional reality. So it's like the membrane that sits around it. So fifth dimensional reality doesn't operate in cycles, it operates as a pulse. So this is the first indication we get to experience when we realize our consciousness is shifting into fifth dimensionality. It's very difficult to be consistent, very difficult to focus on one thing at a time. Very difficult to get solid sleep. Sometimes we want to do something, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're feeling vital, sometimes we're not. There's very little consistency because we're starting to move into a pulse-like rhythm, which is actually the natural state for the human because we're based more on a magnetic principle. So fifth dimensional reality is magnetic. The systems that will be generated there are based on magnetic principles. Third dimensional reality is very much about electrical transference and relay, donation of energy, and possession of energy. You have to be part of a circuit in order to participate. Fifth dimensional reality, we pulse in and out. Scientists are already beginning to discover this because they're saying that our cells pulse in and out of this reality, that our consciousness pulses in and out of this reality very, very fast. So it's starting to see it. So fifth dimensionality is less about process-driven creation, and it's more about creation and manifestation based on resonance, which is why a lot of the metaphysical teachings in the last 20 or 30 years have been prepping us to get into what we believe, what we create. But fifth dimensional reality is so based upon principles of frequency, sound, and resonance that it won't be your thoughts that create your reality. It will be your feeling state and your sense that generates a consensus reality in accordance with that frequency. So that's where we are now. We feel things and then it happens. We're pulsing in and out. We're not interested in process. We don't want to repeat anything we've already done. There's not much satisfaction in repetition for perfection. Now the excitement and stimulation is in the newness of doing something we haven't done before and the sense of curiosity and spontaneity. So that's how we would encapsulate that question
I feel like I
as
was
an
just
answer.
put in a trance by you, um, on this journey of how life really works. So, um, I think it was like Joe Dispenza or Heart Maths Institute, or maybe a combination. It talks about like the you in terms of like manifestation, like the the brain like sends the signal out um, through the electronically, and then the heart's like magnetizes and draws it in, like so you may visualize it, but the heart is about like feeling it. And to your points of um yeah, don't get caught in the loop of going back to the past, or like the past I wasn't able to achieve this or do this or find the love of my life or whatever it is. Because the future is to your point is infinite, that you can jump into any timeline or possibility.
You can.
Yeah.
And there's a very simple mechanism for that.
Oh,
Very, very
simple.
simple. So if you think about linear time, I know we talked about it as circular, but it's represented as a linear axis. Let's call it the x-axis, the horizontal axis. So everything that's already happened in sequence, slow motion replay, is leading us to the future. So if you want to intersect linear time, you can very easily get into the vertical axis, which is the y-axis. And that's very simple. That is being completely present in the now moment, which some people find difficult. A lot of people will practice that or through meditation. Eckhart Tolle was instrumental in bringing this opening into vertical time, into the reality. We're so grateful for his presence. The other thing that is very simple to do to get you into vertical time shift, is spontaneous action. And it can be anything simple right now, clicking fingers spontaneously opens up vertical time. You're instantly present. Now you have accessed all of the parallel versions of realities that are available to you up and down that vertical axis. So the trick is spontaneous action, pay attention. I wonder what's going to happen, because the question keeps you in vertical time. And then something new begins to appear. And you have, in effect, moved into a different version of events. So this is why practices around being present and being in the now moment are so important because they open the door out of third, fourth density experience and they open you up into fifth dimensionality.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. So I'm gonna uh test this out more so from, let's just say someone wants to earn extra income and they are working, they need to work like multiple jobs, and those will not get the income that they need, but it's what they need to do. So because it's a job, they need to do what they're being told, whether it's washing dishes or whether it's doing certain paperwork. So they may have spontaneous idea to say they want to do something else, but because of being employed by someone, they're forced to continue to do what they have to do. Like, what? How would you approach that scenario using the concept you just shared?
Well, it's interesting because the words that you use that they're forced to do something they don't want to do.
Mm,
That's interesting. For sure, there are cases in the world where that happens, but in most cases, that's not really the case.
mm,
So, we did mention earlier that some of the greatest structures that exist in third, fourth density we're not even consciously aware of. And we did mention earlier about this idea that I can't feel the way that I want to feel until my reality is arranged in a certain way, until my external reality gives me permission to feel that.
yeah.
I don't have permission to feel how I want to feel whenever I want to feel it.
Uh,
This is so important. So the person that's doing the job that they don't really want to do, how do they want to feel? And what they'll say is, well, I want to feel
yeah.
free and I want to feel stimulated and I want to feel like I don't have to worry about money and I want to feel all of these things. I want to feel relieved. I want to feel vital. I want to feel enthusiastic. But they'll say, I can't feel those things until reality tells me that I can. And this is when you're a slave to your reality, which is in essence what third dimensionality has been about.
Yeah.
So if you give yourself permission, you get into the now moment, you do something spontaneous. Right now, I've decided I want to feel like I can do whatever I want to do. I can want to feel like I'm relieved. Ugh. Because where does that feeling exist? It doesn't exist out there or between yourself and that stimulus. It actually exists within the body. So if you can feel that feeling anyway, you are now actively reshaping your field of reality
Yeah.
because reality shapes itself around your vibration. And yet humans have been taught, and this is a system that very few people are aware of, you've been taught that you have to have permission to feel the way that you want to feel.
Yeah. Wow. That's brilliant. That's gold. Um, it reminds me of what you shared earlier. It's like the different chess pieces, and when we are not conscious, and even you well picked up about the words being forced to do something, it feels like that when we're less conscious, we feel like the chess pieces can only move in certain direction, or and and yet when we are more conscious, the chess pieces we can see, you can actually move it outside of the box, or move in whatever patterns you want, and potentially these are just chess pieces. You don't even need to play with the chess pieces. You can
Right.
you can go and play video games if you want. You can do anything you want. You can just watch and observe if you want. And correct me if I'm wrong, but translating what my understanding of what you shared, even if someone is working something on a job right now, they if spontaneously they get called to take a conscious breath, they can take a conscious breath. If they spontaneously they have a thought to go and think about the loved ones, like they can, or what they want to feel like, maybe not even attaching to the past of a loved ones, or something, but I just want to like feel happy right now, and joy just spring up,
Yes.
and that's okay too.
Yes. Or they spontaneously do something different in their job just because they want to.
Mm,
And they do it from a place of sense of freedom and because I want to do it this way and I will. and it's witnessed as a great success. And suddenly they're recognized for their innovation, for doing something spontaneously that ended up being wonderful. So
Yeah.
it all comes back to that feeling state and the spontaneity and sense of presence that opens up the possibilities. So it's incredibly important because that ability to actually free yourself from predictable outcome is so available right now. And I love what you said about the chess. Let's go back to that because the chess analogy is so important if you think about chess in terms of identity, because most people identify as the pieces on the board. I'm subject to the greater powers, the government, whatever's happening in the world. I'm going to get moved around and messed about based upon decisions that other people make. And we're seeing a lot of that right now in the US. People are really identifying as the chess pieces because there are new players on the board and everyone's really worried about what moves they're going to make. Now, if you identify the chess pieces, that's a very precarious experience of life. If you identify as the players, and a lot of people, they start to feel empowered in their lives and they now feel like they're the player. But now they have to learn how to play the system. I've got to play with the career. I've got to play with the taxation system. I've got to play with laws. I've got to really play with my in-laws, and I've got to be very strategic. And that's a sense of empowerment to a certain extent, but it's still an incredible amount of anxiety. And then the more awakened you become, you realize you're neither the players, you're neither the system or the participants, you're actually the witness. And when you start to identify as the audience, everything just becomes very stimulating and interesting. And you can see what could happen. And you're excited because you don't know what's going to happen. I wonder how they're going to play it. But you're no longer identifying as being played or being the player. And that's the duality paradigm. You're either the player or you're being played. And fifth dimensionality is, I wonder how this is going to play out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I go into what you just shared, almost like sometimes when I have dreams and
So,
like, oh wow, like, and I'm semi-lucid and like I wonder like what's gonna happen in this dream. And when I become lucid, there are times that I can actually control the dream. But like, what's the fun? Like, then I would know what the ending is. I want to see like how this plays out. And and yet, in this waking dream of ours, sometimes that we take it too seriously that because it seems like it's so slow that oh man, like I don't want to feel like this forever. So, um, and we think it's so it just feels so real that this is the only thing that is real until we wake up to it. So
yes,
I like what you have said when you wake up. Like, and I've definitely experienced that when you become a witness. It's like you like the little baby, like looking at the hands. Whoa, look at the hands. It's like amazing. You look at everything around
exactly.
you. Whoa, like this world is amazing. But when we have the attachment of the belief, like what life should be or shouldn't, that's when, oh, well, life is not happening like this. It's a traffic jam and I don't like it.
Yes. And I mean, that's one of the most powerful quotes in the Bible, I believe, which is, be ye like children if you wish to seek or you wish to enter the kingdom of heaven. And it's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
it's being in that curiosity. And what's interesting is that most people would think that the trickiest thing is moving from being the player, from the being played to the player. But in many of the conversations and interactions I have with people from all around the world, it's actually very tricky for awakening people to shift from being the player to the witness. And that's often where people get stuck because they say, well, I'm pretty conscious, and I know what's going on. And, I do my spiritual practices and life is going pretty well to a certain extent. And I'm feeling very accomplished. And then things stop going so well. And this is a thing that starts to happen when you're going to have that next evolutionary step, because all the stuff that used to work for you, how you used to play the game, isn't working anymore. And so they start to think that there's something wrong with them or there's something missing. But what's happening is they're being invited to now become the witness. But it's kind of hard to let go of the control of being the player to do that. But that's where I see a lot of people moving into that state now.
Well, you hit the nail on the spot on what I wanted to jump to next. Um, because as a chess piece, you are in the victimhood mentality that you don't have a choice whether someone did something bad to you in a relationship, or you've got a health condition like cancer, or whether you just lost a big contract in your business, or you lost a job, and it just feels like you're the victim. And then with personal development, like you can control your destiny now. You can like control your mindset, and with that you can reframe to be like more positive thinking, and through a dose of positivity and mastering your mindset, whether it's resilience and whatever, then you can become a great player, but you're
Hmm.
still being the player. And it'll get you so far. Like I think I was sharing with you that for much of my life, I'm like if you look at the spiral dynamics, like the archetype of the achiever, that's all I wanted to do: achieve kindness, happiness, and success, and all that. Um, and my goal was to bring happiness, success, and fun to 500 million people. Why 500 million people? Because it needs to be a big enough number so that I can feel like I'm playing a big game and I'm winning it. Like, can potentially win a big game, and then eventually, when you become the witness, it's like, you know what, like if I'm wanting to help 500 million people, I'm projecting out this world is broken, but it's not. Like they are me, I am them. Like everything is one, and this is just life is just an experience. Um, and and the witness part, like yeah, it's when you see the witness, you look in your broccoli, you see the patterns of creations, go, wow. You look at like
Yeah.
how the different life circumstances that came together, that you and I get to be on this conversation right now, of 8 billion people on this planet. Wow. I look at the your background, the flower, the creation, everything is like, wow. This, as a witness, like I got to co-create and co-experience all of that. Like, how wonderful. So then, like, my question is like, Rebecca, like, how do we, like, more consistently? I heard a yearning as well. Somebody say like, well, people wanting to be more enlightened, and almost like judging that, being like, when we are playing the victimhood mentality, or in the 3D is not right. Maybe that's not the right thinking around it, but naturally, as the achiever archetype, it's like, well, how do I achieve the higher level that I am more conscious, I'm more often being the witness than being the victim, or even being the player? Is it like through like just doing more meditation to raise the consciousness? Is that something that we can actually do?
Some like exercises that master chess players would practice, right? And so it gets you from being played to being the player in terms of the evolution of consciousness. So all of these strategies, which is why it's very interesting when people ask us about strategies now. We don't really offer strategies. We'll offer maybe tweaks or mechanisms, tweaks in perspective, because if we give you a strategy, you're still playing the game. So let's talk about it in terms of a simulation. So let's say you're in like a simulator and you're doing one of these pilot things, and you're in like a room full of however billion people are on the planet. There's 8 billion people sitting in this huge room, and you're all in your little simulator. So there's certain maps of experience, right, within the holographic field that people are playing within their simulator. And the whole premise for being a human in that Earth reality is we've got to learn how to navigate. So we've got to learn how to figure out where all the maps are, and then we've got to learn how to get through and who gets the most points and who can survive. And how well can I do? Oh, that person's doing really well over there. Let me see if I can be competitive with them. So competition's a whole thing. And you see the avatars of other players show up, right? And this is actually really how the holographic reality works. So you see other people represented there, but it's really just you. You're really the only one there. And what happens is that more you become awakened and you evolve in your consciousness, you actually start to hit the limit of the map. So you've worked out how to play the game really well with your meditation exercises and mastering your thoughts and your emotions and your body and all those sorts of things. And now suddenly, what are you going to do? You've reached the limits of the game. Do you go back and do you play it all again just for fun? Probably not, because you realize that there's so many other people already playing that game. It's no longer that interesting to you anymore. So this is where you get to a certain part of the map, and then there's this threshold, and then it's just blank. And you've got to have the boldness, the curiosity, and actually the audacity to fly into no man's land. Now you might disappear. The worry is I'm going to disappear from view. No one's going to know I exist anymore, and I'm a bit of a legend in this game. So my identity won't be there anymore. My avatar will go, and people won't be following me necessarily. Do I want to stay and be a hot shot, or do I want to move into no man's land? What could happen to me? And the real pioneers in consciousness right now are flying out in no man's land. And as they do so, their consciousness is generating new levels of the gameplay, new experiences, new things that they're interested in discovering and creating that now becomes available for the collective blueprint of humanity to experience. So you go from a game player to now you're designing the game.
Yeah. You remind me of the Truman Show. Um,
Right.
hitting the
Right.
edge.
Hitting the edge.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to lose the this before we move to a different question. So since it's not necessarily just about doing more or meditating more, it can be, but it's not trying to work hard to to get there or more strategies. Is it just the awareness?
It's
Awareness?
what am I curious about?
Mm,
Where is the curiosity? Where is the stimulation in the unknown? Because the mystery is what innately drives human consciousness to expand. Now, we could often say, well, it's the desire for knowledge. It's not the desire for knowledge. It's the mystery itself that is the motivating force.
yeah.
That's just translated into knowledge. But if there's a desire for knowledge, we already know the knowledge exists. And it's not that, then that's possession, not evolution. So it's that I wonder what could happen. I wonder what else is possible. I wonder what else I will do in this life yet. What is most interesting to me? I'm hearing something that that person's saying, and I wonder what that's about. I want to explore more.
Ah. Ah, okay. So I'm gonna translate this in my own language. You tell me whether like it's kind of on the right track. So I start the day. Like yeah, I have my list of to-dos or outcomes I want to achieve. Um, but I wonder what today is gonna be. I wonder what surprises are gonna pop up today. And I wonder, like, I wanted to achieve these main outcomes. I wonder whether that's going to turn out exactly how I envision it, or it'll be turn out differently. I have certain visuals, or I want to join certain lifestyle that I want, and life circumstances that I want, but I'm not attached to the outcome. I want to focus more on the feeling, the journey of I want to be happy, I want to be loved, I want to be compassionate, I want to feel abundance and yet if I get stuck in the traffic jam, if something happens, wow, like I wonder how I could like appreciate that journey the
Yes.
whole time.
Yes. So curiosity is a particular vibration.
Mm,
And curiosity takes you into the space of infinite possibility. So if you think about even how science and physics has evolved, it's gone from the focus upon matter into the focus of the energy between matter to now antimatter or dark matter, the unknown, that which hasn't yet been formed. And the same thing happens with our consciousness. We're very focused on the material things. And then as the more we evolve through life, we become more focused on what are the relationships between things and the patterns and how does that work? And now we're moving across that threshold into there is so much that we don't know yet.
mm,
And I'm excited to discover what I don't know yet. I'm excited to discover what I will do that I have no idea about yet. And you feel that in your body, and that is the energy of vitality in your cells.
mm.
So the curiosity is there. And if you're having trouble getting into a state of curiosity, like say you're sitting in the car in traffic, what would I like to be feeling right now? Oh, I want to feel as if I'm actually driving to the airport to go on holiday, or that I don't even have a job to go to today. I am just driving around and relaxing and enjoying the view, or whatever it is you want to feel. You get into that feeling state and you have immediately changed the gameplay. And so I wonder what's going to happen now, because now from that vibration, a different version of your day will start to unfold.
Rebecca, it's early in the morning for me right now, and like I can't recall like I've been so excited in early in the morning. Like I wonder what's gonna happen to me today. Like I wonder what feeling I can conjure up today.
That's it.
And yeah,
That's the creation state.
yeah. And one of the things that popped up for me as you mentioned before, like children are something about like the Bible saying that we like to the gateway to heavens is like being like children or playful like children. As kids, we often uh, get asked like a million questions like how does this help? Why is it there? And so they have this natural curiosity. And one of the reason that I started homeschooling the kids at the time was that I didn't want them because part of one of the path that I went through is called unschooling. Have you heard of that?
I actually did that. I
Like for
did
you?
that with my son also.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so like for those that haven't heard of this concept, it's like basically you teach them nothing, and but you set them up with the environment where there's nature, where there's like a bookshelf of books
Mhm.
for them to just explore because they got this innate um, drive to learn and to explore, um, and not saying that they can't do that in traditional schooling. I used to have a more dualistic, like, hey, like unschooling or homeschooling is better, but now I see it different. But in traditional schooling, a lot of the side effects could be that, well, you're only learning this because we're telling you that you have to learn it, and then the parents would then reinforce it to say, well, you only got to learn this because I told you, I drove you to school each day, and so it takes the ownership or the whole process of learning is away from them to an extent. You only learn about history or geography because the teacher or someone taught you versus you explored. So, um, do you have any recommendation on how do we keep for kids, especially how do we um, cultivate that curiosity for as long as we can, or maybe don't let it diminish?
Well, you made such a beautiful point there, and thank you for introducing that to the conversation. Because earlier we said that there were two main, well, I think we mentioned that there were two main belief structures that most people are not aware of. And the first one we already talked about. That was that you can feel whatever you want to feel, whenever you want to feel it. The second one is that humans are not designed for storage. You're designed for creation. So the way in which we do everything in this reality, a third, fourth dimensional reality, is based around the premise that we store things. So we go out and we look for things and then we take possession of them and we store them. So we're storage facilities for data, for information, for trauma, for experience, for memory, for energy, and then you can trade what you have stored or what you possess. So you become part of this exchange system, but it also then means you can become depleted. You have to then go and top up again. And so it's a very disempowering system for humans, particularly because we have an infinite supply of energy and wisdom and data that actually comes from the inside out. So when children are taught at a young age to absorb information, which is in essence what the traditional school system has been, take this and absorb it. It actually tends to weigh their consciousness down rather than stimulate it into knowing more. And so the energy really that children thrive on, that we all thrive on as humans, when it comes to activating innate intelligence and knowing things that perhaps we don't know that we know, is discovery. And so that energy of discovery, I'm interested in discovering something new. I'm interested into discovering something more about that. But usually that discovery comes from an intuitive hit. I'm going to try this differently. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to ask this particular question. And in that way, all of the wisdom that's being generated is actually being generated within your own consciousness as an act of discovery in the environment, rather than the absorption and the storage of information. So I think we innately are discoverers. I think we learn to be storage. And the challenge is to have that balance of both. So for children, to continually ask them, what are you interested in discovering more about?
Yeah. So still try to memorize the times table, but giving them more opportunity to discover and explore.
Right.
Yeah, got it. Um, so I know that wow, like you've shared so much, and like I'm amazed with what you have um you have learned over the years, you and it's ironically like that you started your career as an architect, again a very structured.
Well, as a student, yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah, yeah,
I wouldn't, yeah. I was funny because I've never actually thought about what I do as a career in some sense, because I guess I always think about careers as, there's structure and there's certain hierarchies you move through and there's certain strategies to get where you're going. And I've totally just been flying by the seat of my pants the whole time, because there is actually no structure for what I do. Um, and there's certainly no professional body that I'm aware of, or I think there's some courses you can do in the US here, I believe. You can study anything here. But it's that joy of discovery that continues to motivate me. And as I do so, I get into conversations like this, new awarenesses arrive. There's certain views and ways that we've spoken about things today that I've never heard before.
yeah.
So it's always new.
I when I was doing the schooling for my kids, part of the path that I wanted to go down is I I hear of stories like Guru didn't go to school but then have like all this knowledge and wisdom like that just downloaded, and I've got other friends of mine that they're very wise as well. Again, like find school completely boring because they channel all this information. I wanted to give them access to some of these abilities. Like, what was your approach to your son? Would you Do you have a set path that hey, you want them to release this gift, or you just again just tap into the unknown, like what was going to happen to him, what's going to happen to him anyway?
And I would just say one thing before I move into that, is that I prefer the term uploading instead of downloading, because
Mm,
I believe that everything comes from within
mm,
out. And I think
love it.
that's important. When we give ourselves the space to discover, we come out with some cool things. And then we test it in the environment, and yes,
Yeah, love it.
rather than the environment telling us,
Yeah,
what's real and what's not. So yeah, going through the unstructured education, it certainly took a few years to get into a more comfortable stage of discovery after going through certain years of school. Because there was probably about 6 or 8 years of school before we went into the non-traditional experience of learning. And it did take a good 2 to 3 years for that switch to flip, to there start to actually be curiosity, because there was so much saturation, and to actually start to be interested in doing things. And then, I always just say, if just pursue what you're interested in. If it's interesting to you, do it. But what happens if I'm not interested after I start? Then do something else. It's not a tragedy if you try this and then try this and then try this. So he's actually at university now, and I think he's in third year university now. And I'm surprised. I didn't even think that he would go to university. Not that he didn't have the capacity to. I just didn't think he would be interested in doing it. But yeah, he's absolutely loving it. But he's going through the medical school at the moment, and it's all memorization.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh,
he's saying, I can't believe this. This is like, you just have to sit there and remember things. And he
yeah.
said it's so different to how I'm used to doing things.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I said, well, that's what high school would have been like if you.
Yeah.
It's just a different muscle, different part of the brain.
Yeah. Well, I have my guesses on why that path makes sense for him. His and like I actually I don't care about projecting. Like I can see him like almost like going down the Deepak Chopra path that to do the West, like you do the East, and then you bring it all together. Like it's beautiful, but we'll see
Maybe,
what unfolds.
maybe. I think he has his own way of seeing the world, and I think maybe if I wasn't his mother, he would be a lot more uh, openly eager
Yeah,
to discover some of the things that I speak about.
yeah. So you channel the master. What why what I assume they came here to, is it to assist? And if so, what is it that they're assisting with?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I know it sounds very surface, but and it should be simple to answer, but I think the difficulty in answering that question is it's asked from a position where the masters are either chess pieces or chess players, and they're really not. They're just witnesses, and they offer a view of the game
Mm,
so that we can understand the beauty of it, and perhaps stand next to them and join them in observing the beauty of the game.
mm, love that. And has the message shifted over the last few years in terms of like, i- i- is there urgency? Is it like, or is it like,
Never urgency.
yeah,
There's never urgency because they always come through in a state of timelessness. Sometimes I'll give time references about what's happening in the reality, but we always speak in terms of potentials and possibilities because nothing is fixed.
yeah,
And so we really like to we often guide people in terms of what they're currently experiencing, because a lot of people who are going through these changes have disruption in their lives as they move out of structure and their bodies start doing interesting things, and their environment starts looking different. And people love change, but they love change when they feel like they're the players deciding what the change is. And a lot of people, even if you're highly conscious, don't like change if they haven't decided that that change is what needs to happen. And so we assist people in understanding and navigating some of the changes that are happening for them as they're evolving. And we offer new insights around sciences and innovations, and we often ignite new ways of doing things within conversations with people. We see little, could be done this way, or here's an idea, or just to see what will happen.
yeah. Are there certain themes that, because I know that you've got, you talk about the master coming to help people with the current challenges or circumstances they're going through.
Mhm.
Are there certain themes that you see what the master has been advising or guiding people on the perhaps a different perspective of late?
Oh, all sorts of things. I mean, most recently, what have we been talking about recently? Oh, we did a seminar a few weeks ago on, and we never know what it's going to be about. We do one every month. It just depends. And then people ask questions, so that can change the theme also. But they generally spoke about how the core trauma for humanity is abandonment. And now everything, they gave a whole bunch of examples. Everything that we get upset or worried or anxious about is about abandonment. And so they played that out in a number of ways with people so that they could become more comfortable with moving beyond that, because it's that that actually stops us from moving into our greatness. And that's not so different to, I'll just tie it in now to what we talked about with the simulator.
Yeah,
If you go off the edge, are you going to be abandoned?
yeah, nice. And so, what do they share in response to that
Well,
or
that's a
to
whole hour
abandonment? Oh,
seminar.
so then the key to
If you
this
join our
is
membership, you get to join with these themes every month. But all
and
sorts of things. I mean, we talk about time, we talk about financial systems, we just spent 8 weeks doing a series on the body and how the organs and the tissues in the body actually function rather than how we think that they function. I mean, it could be anything. We've done a whole series on how light and sound. We've done about 12 weeks on light and sound and how that actually plays itself out and works in reality and how that's changing. All sorts of things.
wow. So if people want to learn more, like where should they go? What's your website?
So it's just my name.
The audio cut out again. So can you repeat uh, the website? Oh, it's still silent. I'll give it uh, testing, testing, testing.
Are
Yeah,
we
okay,
there?
you're back now. Yep,
Okay.
yep,
I'm not quite sure what's happened. So
yeah,
my website is just my name, rebeccadawson.com. And there's loads of free and available content on there. Just go to the explore page,
yep,
and we have a YouTube channel. I have a membership if you want to engage with us every month and join in with the community and seminars, retreats, lots of things.
yeah.
Come and explore.
Explore it is. Explore and discover. So any parting words that you want to share with our audience?
I think the greatest evolutionary possibility at this time for those who are really wanting to become really shift into their greatness in this life is to experience as much as you possibly can, because this is where we're no longer moving into the minute detail of specialization. We're now opening into fractalization, and that's the best possible opportunity we have for evolution and expansion in this current condition of earth reality, is to experience as much as you can, which means you don't have to finish everything that you start, but follow what is of interest to you and experience as much as you can. Taste the whole buffet is what we say.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. After spending the last hour with you, I feel my heart is probably more open than it has been for quite some time. And yet it's scary because it feels like it's it's jumping off that cliff, that edge that's unknown. It reminds me of the Barbie movie, and Billie Eilish got the song like Barbie is playing this doll, and the first time like I don't know how to feel like, so
Mhm.
the first time the heart is open, it's like wow, like I can feel more
Yes.
now, but yet it's so intense. I don't know how to feel, but that's the beauty of this life journey.
Yes, absolutely. And the more conscious you are, the more intense it gets.
Yeah, well,
All of it. The volume goes up on intensity.
yeah,
So expect intensity.
Thank you so much. If you like what you've listened to, like, subscribe, comments, and love to listen to you and hear back. I respond to every single message personally. Thank you so much, Rebecca,
Thank you, Gary.
and sending you lots of love.
Thank you. It was great to be here with you.